Aileen Trevino owned Chicago. The Korean immigrant had built an empire from blood and ambition. Real estate portfolios stretching across 3 states, nightclubs that pulsed with bass and bad decisions, restaurants where the city's elite pretended not to know who really owned them. On paper, his businesses were spotless. Beneath the surface, his connections made him immortal. City councilmen owed him favors they could never repay. Rival organizations had learned through painful lessons that challenging him was suicide. His penthouse overlooking the Chicago River cost more than most families earned in 10 lifetimes. But on Christmas Eve, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city's glittering skyline, Aileen sat alone in absolute darkness. No family dinners awaited him. His mother had died 4 years ago in Seoul, heartbroken by the son who'd chosen violence over tradition. Aileen had been orchestrating a territorial expansion, couldn't risk leaving the country, couldn't risk showing weakness. His younger sister had stopped answering his calls years ago, disgusted by the man her brother had become. The occasional lovers who shared his bed never stayed past sunrise, and his lieutenants feared him too much for anything resembling friendship. 36 years old, wealthier than he'd ever imagined possible when he'd arrived in America with a fake passport and burning rage, master of an empire built on fear and calculated cruelty, yet unable to master the crushing emptiness that no amount of soju could drown. He didn't know that in a cramped apartment 8 miles south, a 7-year-old boy with asthma and an impossibly big heart was about to crack his carefully constructed armor wide open. The Korean-Italian fusion restaurant on West Loop was one of Eileen's showcase properties. High-end, exclusive, the kind of place where reservations required 2 months' notice and a background check. He visited unannounced every few weeks to review operations, preferring the controlled chaos of dinner service when he could observe everything from the shadows of his private corner booth. Tonight, December 23rd, the dining room hummed with holiday energy. Wealthy couples celebrated early, clinking champagne glasses. Families laughed over plates of short rib risotto and kimchi carbonara. Aileen nursed his second whiskey, watching the performance with the detachment of someone who owned the theater but never stepped on stage. That's when he noticed her. The waitress moved through the dining room with practiced grace despite obvious exhaustion. She was striking rich brown skin that seemed to glow under the warm lighting, natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, eyes that carried warmth even when her smile faltered. But it was the tension in her shoulders that caught Aileen's attention. The way she checked her phone between tables, anxiety flickering across her features like a neon sign. The way her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was watching. Terry Raub. Aileen had seen the name on employee files but never paid attention, just another cog in the machine that generated his wealth. She approached Eileen's booth with professional courtesy, notepad ready. "Good evening, Mr. Trevino. Can I get you anything else?" Her voice was smooth, melodic, Chicago accent softened by something gentler. Maybe southern roots, maybe exhaustion, maybe just who she was. "I'm fine." Aileen's own accent colored the words 15 years in America hadn't completely erased soul from his tongue, though he'd tried. Terry nodded, turning to leave, but her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Aileen watched the woman's entire demeanor transform worry, sharpening into panic. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out the phone, reading a text message that drained the color from her face. "Is something wrong?" The question surprised Aileen. He didn't involve himself in employees' personal lives. Ever. Terry's head snapped up, professional mask sliding desperately back into place. "No, sir. I apologize. Please excuse me." She hurried toward the kitchen, but not before Aileen saw her swipe at her eyes. He should have let it go. Should have finished his drink and returned to his empty penthouse. Should have maintained the distance that kept him safe, kept him sharp, kept him alive. Instead, he found himself following, catching the tail end of a hushed phone conversation in the staff corridor near the walk-in freezer. "I know, baby. I know you can't breathe good." Terry's voice cracked like breaking glass. "Mama's gonna come home soon as this shift ends, okay? Mrs. Washington is right there with you. Use your inhaler if you need it." A pause. "I know it's almost empty. I'll figure it out, baby. I promise. I love you so much." When she ended the call, her shoulders shook with silent sobs, her hand pressed against the cold metal wall as if it could hold her upright. Aileen cleared his throat. Terry spun around, mortification flooding her features. "Mr. Trevino, I'm so sorry. This won't affect my work. I promise. Your son is sick." It wasn't a question. Terry's jaw tightened, pride straightening her spine even as tears tracked down her cheeks. "He has asthma. It's under control. His inhaler's just running low, that's all." Her voice hardened defensively. It's under control. Aileen studied her. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than 3 seconds. Something about the tattoos crawling up his neck, or maybe the rumors they'd heard, or maybe just the predatory stillness he carried like a second skin. But this waitress met his eyes directly, chin lifted in defiance despite trembling, refusing to bend even while breaking. Something shifted in Eileen's chest. Something dangerous. How much does the medication cost? I don't need your charity. The words came out harsh, protective. I didn't offer charity. I asked a question. Terry's breath hitched. For a moment, Aileen thought she'd tell him to go to hell. He almost hoped she would. It would make walking away easier. Then Terry's shoulders sagged, defeat winning over pride. $800. Insurance doesn't cover it until January resets. I get paid Friday, but I already spent this check on rent and his Christmas presents. She stopped, visibly pulling herself together. I shouldn't be telling you this. I need to get back to work. $800. Eileen had spent that on the designer boots currently on his feet without a second thought. It was nothing. Less than nothing. Background noise in his daily expenses. To this woman, it was everything. Take tomorrow off, Eileen said quietly. Paid. Get your son's medication. Terry's eyes went wide. What? No, I can't. Christmas Eve is our biggest night. You need every server on the floor. I own the restaurant. I decide what I need. Aileen pulled out his wallet, Italian leather, softly worn, and extracted crisp hundreds. Not 8, 15 of them. He pressed the bills into Terry's hand, closing the woman's fingers around them firmly. For the medication and whatever else he requires. Mr. Trevino, I can't take your money. You can. You will. Aileen's tone left no room for negotiation. Not for you. For him. Terry's chin trembled, her professional composure completely shattered now. Why? Good question. Aileen didn't have an answer that made sense, even to himself. He, who calculated every move 3 steps ahead, who never acted on impulse, who'd built his empire on cold logic and colder violence. Because he needs it, he finally said. I'll pay you back. Every penny. I don't care how long it takes. No. The word was absolute. Take care of your child. That's payment enough. Terry stared at the money, then at him, confusion and gratitude warring in her expression. Thank you, she whispered. I don't. Thank you. She left quickly, probably afraid Eileen would change his mind, would reveal this as some cruel game. Eileen returned to his booth, but the whiskey tasted different now, less bitter, less numbing. He told himself it was a momentary impulse, an anomaly in his otherwise calculated existence. Tomorrow he'd forget the waitress and her sick son, return to his regularly scheduled isolation, back to business as usual. But that night, alone in his penthouse with the city lights mocking him through the windows, he kept seeing Terry's face, the fierce maternal love in her eyes when she'd spoken to her child, the way poverty and exhaustion couldn't crush her dignity, the way she'd looked at Aileen not with fear, but with something far more dangerous, recognition, as if she'd seen past the tattoos and the reputation and glimpsed something human underneath. His phone rang. Jiwoo, his second in command. Boss, the shipment from the docks is ready for inspection. You want to review before tomorrow? Tomorrow, Aileen interrupted. What? Suspicion crept into Jiwoo's voice. You never postpone business. Tomorrow, he repeated, and hung up. Christmas Eve. He'd spend it like every other year alone, working, pretending the emptiness didn't exist. That was the plan. That was always the plan. My mum thinks I won't be able to get to 1,000 subscribers before Christmas. Let's prove her wrong. By subscribing to our channel, like and comment where you are watching from. Your support keeps us going. If you are new to our channel, 1 subscriber at a time, let's get to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for your support. December 23rd arrived with bitter wind and the kind of cold that made Chicago feel like punishment. Aileen stepped into his Korean-Italian fusion restaurant just after 7, when the dinner rush hit its peak. He preferred these unannounced inspections. They revealed truth that scheduled visits never could. People performed differently when they thought the boss was watching. The hostess nearly dropped her reservation book when she recognized Aileen. Mr. Trevino, we didn't know you were... Don't announce me. Aileen's voice was quiet but absolute. I'm just observing tonight. He claimed his usual corner booth, the one with sightlines to the entire dining room. The server who approached a nervous kid named Marcus nearly tripped over his own feet. Aileen ordered whiskey, neat, and watched him scurry away like he'd asked for his firstborn. The restaurant hummed with holiday energy. Couples leaned close over candlelight. Families laughed too loud over expensive wine. Business dinners masqueraded as celebration. Aileen nursed his drink and watched the machinery of his empire function smoothly. Every table filled, every plate perfect, every transaction adding to the empire he'd bled to build. That's when he noticed her. Table 12. The waitress moved with practiced efficiency, despite exhaustion etched into every movement. Terry Raub. Eileen had seen the name on employee rosters but never attached it to a face. She was beautiful in an understated way, professional smile firmly in place even as something haunted flickered behind her eyes. Between tables, she checked her phone obsessively, anxiety tightening her shoulders each time. Aileen told himself to look away. Employee drama wasn't his concern. He had managers for that. But he kept watching. When Terry's phone buzzed again, the woman's entire body went rigid. She glanced around quickly, then slipped toward the staff corridor near the kitchen. Aileen watched her go, saw the barely controlled panic in her movements. He should have stayed seated, should have finished his whiskey and left. Instead, he followed. The staff corridor was empty, except for Terry, phone pressed to her ear, voice barely holding together. "Baby, I know it's hard to breathe. I know. Mama's gonna fix this, okay? I promise." Her voice cracked. "How much is left in the inhaler? Just 2 puffs?" Silence. "No, baby, don't cry. Please don't cry. Mama's gonna get you more medicine. I just need..." She stopped listening. $800. I know. My insurance resets in January, but that's too long to wait. Aileen stood perfectly still in the shadows, watching this woman's world crumble over a phone call. "I have 500 saved," Terry continued, her voice breaking. "I can get the rest by Friday, but his inhaler won't last that long. I know, Mrs. Washington. I know he needs it now." Tears streamed down her face now, professional composure completely shattered. "I'll figure something out. I have to. He's my baby." When the call ended, Terry sagged against the wall, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Aileen stepped back into the shadows, mind already calculating. 800 for medication. The woman had 500, needed 300 more but couldn't wait until Friday. He returned to his booth, pulled out his phone, and sent a text to his restaurant manager. The waitress, Terry Raub, put $1,500 bills in an envelope, put it in her coat pocket in the staff room before she leaves tonight. Note should say, "For the boy. Merry Christmas. Don't tell her who it's from. Don't tell anyone. Understand?" The response came immediately. "Yes, Mr. Trevino." Aileen finished his whiskey in one swallow, left $300 bills on the table for a $30 tab, and walked out into the Chicago night. The cold bit through his coat, but he barely felt it. $800. Nothing to him. Everything to that woman and her son. He'd done his good deed for the year. Anonymous charity from the shadows. Tomorrow he'd forget about the exhausted waitress and her sick child. By next week, he wouldn't even remember their faces. That's what he told himself as he drove back to his empty penthouse. The city lights glittering below like false promises. That's what he told himself as he poured another glass of soju and stood at the window, watching Chicago celebrate while he stood alone. That's what he told himself, even as Terry's broken voice echoed in his mind. He's my baby. He'd forget by morning. He had to. The alternative was too dangerous to consider. Christmas Eve morning found Aileen at a pharmacy on 79th Street, far from his usual territory. He told himself he needed to pick up a prescription refill sleeping pills he rarely took. Anxiety medication he refused to admit he needed. The truth was messier, more complicated. He'd been driving aimlessly, unable to focus on work, unable to shake the image of that waitress counting crumpled bills with shaking hands. The pharmacy was crowded with last-minute shoppers, desperate people buying wrapping paper and batteries and forgotten stocking stuffers. Aileen stood in line, invisible behind designer sunglasses and calculated indifference, when he heard it. A child's wheeze. Labored, struggling, fighting for each breath. He turned. Terry Raub stood 3 people ahead, and pressed against her side was a little boy. 7 years old, maybe 8. Brown skin that caught the fluorescent lighting, hair in neat twists, wearing a puffy winter coat that swallowed his small frame. He clutched a small stuffed reindeer to his chest with one hand, the other holding his mother's. But it was his eyes that stopped Eileen, cold, bright, full of life and wonder despite the obvious struggle to breathe. Roy. It had to be Roy. "Next, please." The pharmacist called them forward. Aileen watched Terry approach the counter, watched her pull out a worn wallet with careful dignity. "Hi, I'm here to pick up a prescription for Roy Duckworth. Let me check. The pharmacist disappeared into the back, returned with a paper bag. Here you go. That should last 3 months. Make sure he uses it twice daily, consistently. Thank you. Terry's voice carried profound relief. Thank you so much. She paid. Aileen couldn't see the amount, but watched Terry count out bills with the same careful precision from the restaurant and turned to leave. That's when Roy looked directly at Aileen. Their eyes met. Most people looked away from him, the tattoos crawling up his neck, the cold assessment in his gaze, something predatory they couldn't name but instinctively feared. Children especially kept their distance, sensing danger the way animals sensed storms. Roy smiled and waved. Aileen froze, completely unprepared for such uncomplicated friendliness. He managed a small nod, uncertain what else to do. Outside, the winter air bit like teeth. Aileen collected his prescription. The pharmacist handed it over with efficient indifference and pushed through the door. He nearly collided with Terry and Roy standing just outside, the boy tugging his mother's sleeve with insistent enthusiasm. Mama, please? Just 1 cup? It's Christmas Eve. Baby, we need to be careful with money. Excuse me. Aileen heard himself speak before conscious thought caught up. There's a cafe across the street. May I buy you both hot chocolate? Terry spun around, recognition flooding her features. Oh, you were at the restaurant the other night. Her eyes widened slightly, connecting dots. Mr. Trevino. Yes. An awkward silence stretched between them, broken by Roy's delighted gasp. You know each other? That's so cool. Mama, can we? Please. Terry looked torn, protective instincts warring with something else. Gratitude, maybe, or just exhaustion. We don't want to impose. You're not. Aileen surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. I was heading there anyway. Roy beamed up at him, completely unafraid. I'm Roy. What's your name? Aileen. That's cool. Is it Korean? Mama said you're Korean. I learned about Korea in school last month. Roy, let the man breathe, Terry said gently. But she was smiling now, something warm breaking through her exhaustion. The cafe was aggressively festive, twinkling lights, a crooked Christmas tree, Jingle Bell Rock playing too loud. They claimed a corner table. Roy bounced in his seat despite his labored breathing, radiating impossible energy. Hot chocolate for him, Terry ordered. Just black coffee for me. Make that 2 hot chocolates and an Americano, Aileen corrected, meeting the server's eyes. And whatever pastries you have. When the server left, Terry leaned forward slightly. Mr. Trevino, I need to say something. Someone at the restaurant, I don't know who, left money in my coat. $1,500 with a note about Roy. Her eyes glistened. I know it was someone from management, and I just wanted to say thank you. It saved us. It saved him. Aileen kept his expression neutral, giving nothing away. I'm glad you got what you needed. Their drinks arrived. Roy took a sip of hot chocolate and sighed like he'd tasted heaven. This is the best day ever. Something twisted in Aileen's chest, sharp and unexpected. What are your Christmas plans? He asked, immediately regretting the question. Since when did he make small talk? Nothing fancy, Terry said softly. Dinner at home, some movies. It'll be nice. Just the 2 of us. She paused. What about you? Big plans? No, I'll be working. Roy's face scrunched with concern that seemed far too mature for 7. On Christmas? Don't you have family? Roy. Terry looked mortified. That's not polite. It's fine. Eileen's voice came out quieter than intended. No family nearby. Roy studied him with unnerving intensity, those bright eyes seeing something he'd spent 15 years hiding. Then he announced, with the absolute conviction, only children possessed. You should come to our house for Christmas. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Roy, you can't just invite. Terry started. He's lonely, Mama. Nobody should be lonely on Christmas. Roy turned those luminous eyes on Aileen. We don't have anything fancy, but we have mac and cheese and love. Right, Mama? Terry looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Mr. Trevino, I am so sorry. He doesn't understand. I would like that, Aileen heard himself say. Silence crashed over the table. What? Terry breathed. If the invitation is genuine, Aileen said carefully, his heart doing something strange in his chest. I would like to join you, if that's acceptable. Roy exploded with joy. Yes, Mama, he's coming. This is going to be the best Christmas ever. Terry stared at him, searching for something ulterior motives, maybe, or just confirmation this wasn't some elaborate joke. Are you serious? Aileen had built an empire on calculated decisions, on strategy, on never ever showing weakness. This was madness. Yes, he said quietly. I'm serious. And terrifyingly, he meant it. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow blanketing Chicago in deceptive beauty. Aileen stood outside the 3-story walk-up in South Shore at exactly 2 o'clock, the time Terry had texted him, holding an expensive bottle of wine and a gift bag that had taken him an embarrassing amount of time to assemble. His Mercedes looked obscene parked on this street, too expensive, too out of place, a neon sign announcing he didn't belong. He could leave, should leave. This was insanity, accepting a Christmas invitation from a woman he barely knew. Entering a world so far removed from his own it might as well be another planet. His phone buzzed with messages from Jiwoo business that needed attention, decisions that couldn't wait, the empire that never slept. He ignored them all, but he didn't move toward the building. Just stood there in his designer coat, snow dusting his shoulders, paralyzed by something he refused to name as fear. 10 minutes passed, 15. Then a window on the 2nd floor flew open and Roy's head popped out, his face splitting into pure joy. Mama! He's here! He came! Before Aileen could react, the boy disappeared from the window. 30 seconds later, the building's front door burst open, and Roy came flying down the stairs in pajamas and socks, no coat, arms outstretched. You came! He slammed into Aileen's legs with zero self-preservation, hugging his knees. I told Mama you'd come, but she said maybe you got busy, and I said no. He promised. Aileen stood frozen, completely unprepared for the small human attached to him. Slowly, awkwardly, he patted the boy's head. I promised. Roy! Baby, you don't have shoes on. Terry appeared in the doorway, wearing jeans and a red sweater that made her skin glow, her hair in beautiful twists that framed her face. She looked younger, softer, nothing like the exhausted waitress from the restaurant. I'm so sorry, Mr. Trevino. He's been watching the window since noon. Please, Aileen said quietly. Call me Aileen. Terry's smile was uncertain but genuine. Come inside before we all freeze. The apartment was tiny. Living room flowing into a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. A hallway that probably led to 2 small bedrooms. But it was warm, genuinely warm. Not just temperature, but something else. A small artificial tree sat in the corner, covered in handmade ornaments and dollar store tinsel, garland draped across doorways. The air smelled like cooking food, spices and home and things Aileen had almost forgotten existed. This is for you. He offered Terry the wine. And this is for Roy. The boy tore into the gift bag with gleeful abandon, pulling out a new bicycle helmet covered in flames, matching knee and elbow pads, and a stuffed tiger nearly as big as he was. His gasp could have shattered glass. Mama, look! It's a tiger! He hugged it fiercely. Just like your tattoo, Mr. Aileen. Terry's eyes went wide. Aileen, this is too much. Way too much. It's Christmas. Aileen shrugged off his coat, revealing the intricate tiger tattoo that wound up his neck, its eyes fierce and protective. He needs a helmet for that bike. How did you? Terry stopped, shaking her head with a small laugh. Never mind. Thank you, really. Dinner was an experience Aileen had no reference for. The table was small, mismatched chairs, plates that didn't match either, but the food mac and cheese that melted on the tongue, collard greens cooked with some kind of magic, cornbread that crumbled perfectly, and Eileen's contribution of Korean short ribs that he'd had his chef prepare that morning. These are incredible, Terry said, her eyes closing in appreciation. What's the marinade? Soy sauce, pear, garlic, ginger, family recipe. The words came out before Aileen could stop them, before he could remember that talking about family meant remembering what he'd lost. Did your mama teach you? Roy asked around a mouthful of mac and cheese. My grandmother. In Seoul. Before we came to America, the memory surfaced unexpectedly his grandmother's tiny kitchen, the smell of sesame oil and fermented soybeans, hands guiding his smaller ones. She said cooking was how we stayed Korean, even far from home. Do you miss it? Terry asked softly. Korea? Sometimes. I miss who I was there. Before. He stopped, realizing he'd said too much, but Terry just nodded, understanding somehow without words. After dinner, Roy dragged Aileen to the couch, clutching his new tiger. His name is Max. Because that's a strong name. Like yours. Aileen isn't a strong name, he said, surprising himself with honesty. It means beautiful in Korean. My parents wanted me to be, softer than I became. But you're strong anyway. Roy announced with perfect child logic. You're like a tiger, strong and protective. He studied Aileen's neck tattoo with intense concentration. Why'd you get a tiger? Roy, that's personal, Terry started. It's okay. Aileen touched the tattoo unconsciously. Tigers in Korea are protectors, guardians. I got it when I decided to protect myself. When I decided no one would hurt me again. Roy nodded solemnly, processing this with unexpected seriousness. Then he brightened. So you're the Tiger Lady. That's your name now. Tiger Lady. Something cracked in Aileen's chest. He looked at this 7-year-old boy with his too big pajamas and his breathing problems and his absolute fearlessness, and something happened that he thought had died 15 years ago. He laughed. Not the cold, calculating sound he used in business meetings. Not the polite noise he made at necessary social functions. A real laugh, genuine and surprised, and completely uncontrolled. Terry stared at him, eyes wide. Roy beamed like he'd won the lottery. Tiger Lady it is, Aileen managed, and meant it. They watched a Christmas movie, something animated about a train and believing, and Roy fell asleep against his side, the boy's small body trusting and warm, his wheezing breath steady with medication. Terry looked over, her expression soft. Thank you for coming, for being here. I know this isn't. I know we're not what you're used to. Aileen looked around the tiny apartment with its secondhand furniture and handmade decorations and this beautiful, exhausted woman who worked herself to death for her son. He thought about his empty penthouse with its $1,000,000 view and designer everything and crushing loneliness. No, he said quietly. This is better. And for the first time in 15 years, he meant it. Outside, snow continued to fall on Chicago. But inside this tiny apartment, for the first time since he could remember, Eileen Trevino felt warm. New Year's Eve brought the kind of shift that destroyed souls. The restaurant was packed with people who drank too much and tipped too little, celebrating the passage of time like it meant something. Terry's feet screamed by hour 6, her smile wearing thin by hour 8. By 11:30, when the last drunk couple finally stumbled out, she wanted nothing more than to collapse. You need a ride? Marcus, the young server, asked as they cashed out. I'm good. It's only 10 blocks. Terry pulled on her coat, every muscle protesting. It's late, though. I've walked it 100 times. I'll be fine. She should have accepted. The street was nearly empty. Most people at parties are safely drunk at home. Terry walked quickly, keys threaded between her fingers the way her mother had taught her. 2 blocks from her apartment, she passed a closed bodega, its security gate pulled down, the streetlight above it flickering like a dying heartbeat. They came from the alley. 3 of them. The first grabbed her purse, yanking hard. The second caught her arm, spinning her around. The third blocked her escape route, grinning like this was entertainment. Nice purse, the first one said. His breath reeked of cheap beer. What else you got? Take it. Terry's voice shook but stayed steady. Just take it and go. Maybe we want more than the purse. The second one's grip tightened on her arm, fingers digging into her flesh. Terry opened her mouth to scream. Then the shadows moved. Aileen appeared behind the third man like smoke given form, like violence made flesh. He didn't announce himself, didn't give warning. His hand shot out, grabbed the back of the man's head, and slammed his face into the brick wall with a sound like breaking pottery. He crumpled, unconscious before he hit the ground. The other 2 spun around. What the fu? Aileen moved. Terry had never seen anything like it, pure economical brutality. He caught the first man's wrist, twisted with surgical precision, and the snap of breaking fingers echoed off the buildings. His scream was cut short by Eileen's elbow to his throat. He went down gagging, clutching his ruined hand. The second man, the one who'd grabbed Terry, reached into his jacket. Knife, gun, Terry didn't know. He never got it out. Aileen closed the distance in 2 steps, drove his knee into the man's stomach, and as he doubled over, brought his elbow down on the back of his neck. Then he grabbed his jaw and twisted. The crack of bone was sickening, final. He collapsed, conscious but unable to scream, cradling his shattered jaw. The whole thing took maybe 15 seconds. Eileen stood over the 3 men, breathing calmly, not even winded. In the flickering streetlight, his neck tattoo seemed alive, the tiger's eyes glowing with predatory satisfaction. Blood spattered his expensive coat, not his. He turned to Terry. Are you hurt? Terry couldn't speak, couldn't move. Just stared at this man who'd shared Christmas dinner with her son, who'd laughed at Roy's jokes, who'd just destroyed 3 men with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. Terry. Aileen's voice softened slightly. Are you hurt? No. The word came out as a whisper. No. The man with the broken jaw tried to crawl away. Aileen stepped on his hand almost casually, grinding his heel down until he made a muffled sound of agony. If I ever see any of you near her again, he said quietly, conversationally, like discussing the weather, I won't stop at broken bones. Understand? The conscious ones nodded frantically. Eileen lifted his foot and they scrambled away, dragging their unconscious friend, leaving smears of blood on the sidewalk. Then it was just the two of them. Terry and this man she'd invited into her home, into her son's life, who'd just demonstrated the capacity for controlled, devastating violence. Who are you? Terry's voice shook. Who are you really? Aileen was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those calculating eyes. Then he stepped closer slowly, giving Terry space to back away if she wanted to. Someone who doesn't let anyone hurt what's mine. What's yours? You and Roy. No hesitation. No uncertainty. You're under my protection now. Permanently. Terry should have been terrified. Should have grabbed Roy and run as far from this man as possible. This man who moved like death, who broke bones like snapping twigs, who clearly lived in a world of violence Terry couldn't even imagine. But Roy's laugh echoed in her memory. The way Eileen had patted his head with such careful gentleness. The way he'd shared stories about his grandmother, vulnerability flickering across his face. The way he'd looked at them both like they were something precious. You're in the Mafia, Terry said. Not a question. Aileen's jaw tightened. Yes, that's why you have money. Why people at the restaurant act nervous around you. Why you. She gestured at the blood on the sidewalk. Yes. And now we're what? Under your protection? Like in the movies? Like in reality? Eileen's voice was quiet but absolute. No one touches you. No one threatens you. Anyone who tries answers to me. That's the deal. I didn't agree to any deal. You invited me to Christmas dinner. You let me into your home, into your son's life. Eileen's eyes blazed with something fierce and possessive. That makes you mine to protect. I don't negotiate on this. Terry stared at him, heart hammering, mind racing. This was insane. Dangerous. Everything she should run from. Walk me home, she heard herself say. Aileen blinked, clearly surprised. What? You said I'm under your protection. So protect me. Walk me home. Something shifted in Eileen's expression relief. Maybe. Or gratitude that Terry wasn't running. Of course. They walked in silence for 2 blocks. Terry's hands shook, adrenaline finally crashing through her system. When they reached her building, she turned to face Eileen. My son, she said quietly. If you're in our lives, if you're whatever this is, you keep him safe. You keep him innocent as long as possible. That's my only rule. I swear it. No hesitation. On my life. Terry nodded slowly. Okay. You saved me tonight. You've been kind to Roy. And I think... She paused, choosing words carefully. I think you're dangerous. But not to us. Never to you. Aileen's voice was almost pleading. Never to him. Then okay. Terry managed a shaky smile. Tiger lady. Aileen's expression softened, the predator receding, something almost human emerging. Happy New Year, Terry. Happy New Year. Terry watched from her window as Aileen drove away, the Mercedes disappearing into the Chicago night. She should call the police, should grab Roy and disappear. Instead, she made hot chocolate and sat in the dark, processing the truth she'd just learned. She'd invited a monster to Christmas dinner, but that monster had just saved her life. And somehow, impossibly, she still trusted him with her son. January thawed into February, and Aileen found himself doing something he'd never done before, living a double life, but in reverse. His days belonged to the Empire. Meetings with lieutenants, territory negotiations, the endless machinery of organized crime that required constant attention. But his evenings, his Sundays, the spaces between violence those belonged to them, it started with Sunday dinners. You're doing it wrong, Aileen said, watching Terry massacre the cabbage. I'm following the recipe exactly. Kimchi isn't about recipes. It's about feeling. Eileen moved beside her, guiding her hands. The cabbage needs to be salted properly. Not too much, not too little. Here. Their hands touched. Terry's breath caught slightly. Eileen pretended not to notice the way her pulse jumped, the way the kitchen suddenly felt smaller, warmer. Like this? Terry asked softly. Exactly like that. Roy burst into the kitchen, his new stuffed tiger dragging behind him. Are we making the spicy cabbage again? Can I help? Absolutely not, both adults said simultaneously, then laughed. It's too spicy for you, baby, Terry explained. But I'm getting stronger, Tiger Lady said so. It was true. Every Saturday morning, weather permitting, Aileen took Roy to Washington Park for what he called tiger training. Really, it was basic taekwondo disguised as play, teaching him stances, balance, how to fall without getting hurt, how to stand with confidence. Show me your horse stance, he'd say, and Roy would plant his feet wide, bend his knees, face serious with concentration. Like this? Lower. Tigers crouch before they pounce. He'd adjust, trembling with effort, and Aileen would nod approval. Good. 5 more seconds. Strong tigers don't give up. Other children in the park watched with interest. Parents watched with suspicion this tattooed man with the expensive coat and the dangerous eyes, teaching someone else's child. But Roy never noticed their stares, too focused on making him proud. Can I break boards like you? He asked one morning, breath misting in the cold air. Someday, when you're older, when you understand that strength isn't about breaking things, it's about protecting what you love. Like you protect Mama? Aileen's chest tightened. Exactly like that. On weekends, he took them places Terry couldn't afford. The shed aquarium, where Roy pressed his face against the glass, watching beluga whales glide past like ghosts. The field museum, where he stood beneath Sue the T-Rex and declared he'd be a paleontologist. The Chicago Symphony, where even Roy's endless energy stilled under the weight of music. You're spoiling him, Terry said after the symphony, as they walked through the snow-dusted streets. Is that wrong? No, Terry stopped walking, facing him. Why are you doing this? Really? Aileen looked at Roy, skipping ahead, his laughter echoing off the buildings. Then at Terry, beautiful and exhausted, and stronger than anyone he'd ever met. Because I can. Because you both make me remember there's more to life than territory and violence. Because when I'm with you. He stopped, vulnerability cracking through his armor. I remember who I was before I became this. Terry's hand found his, squeezed gently. I like who you are, both versions. At the office, the change didn't go unnoticed. Boss, you smiled at the supplier, Jiwoo said, concerned. You never smile at suppliers. He made a good joke. He made a joke about the weather. You once broke someone's arm for making weather small talk. Aileen checked his phone, a text from Terry about dinner plans. He smiled without meaning to. Are you... Jiwoo leaned closer. Are you seeing someone? That's none of your concern. You are. Boss, you're actually blushing. I've never seen you blush. Who is she? Is she in the business? She's a waitress with a 7-year-old son who has asthma and more courage than half my organization combined. Jiwoo stared. You're serious. Completely. Does she know what you do? Yes. And she's she's okay with? Aileen thought about New Year's Eve, the blood on the sidewalk, the way Terry had looked at him terrified but trusting. She's teaching me that people can be more than one thing, that I can be more than this. Boss, I'm leaving early today. Handle the shipment inspection. You never leave early. I do now. The nights were Aileen's favorite. After Roy fell asleep, he and Terry would sit on the worn couch with tea, talking about everything and nothing. Terry shared dreams of nursing school she'd abandoned when Roy was born. Aileen talked about Seoul, about his grandmother's kitchen, about the boy he'd been before violence became currency. Do you ever regret it? Terry asked one night. The life you chose? Every day. And never. Aileen's honesty surprised him. I regret what I lost. My family, my innocence. But I don't regret surviving. I don't regret becoming strong enough that no one could hurt me again. What hurt you? Before? Aileen was quiet for a long moment. My father. He believed men should be hard, ruthless, willing to do anything for power, when I wasn't. He touched the tiger on his neck unconsciously. I learned that being soft gets you killed. Being hard keeps you alive. Terry's hand covered his. You're not hard. Not with us. No, Aileen agreed softly. Not with you. Their faces were close now, breath mingling in the space between them. Aileen could see gold flecks in Terry's eyes, could smell her cocoa butter lotion, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Aileen, Terry whispered. Yes? I'm falling for you. I don't know if that's stupid or brave, but I am. Aileen's heart did something complicated in his chest. It's terrifying. For both of us. But you feel it too? Yes. The The word came out raw, honest. God help me, yes. Terry leaned forward slowly, giving Aileen space to pull back. He didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively, like a question being asked and answered simultaneously. When they pulled apart, Terry was smiling. Well, Tiger Lady, what do we do now? Aileen thought about his empire built on fear and violence, about this tiny apartment filled with love and laughter, about the choice standing before him like a crossroads. We figure it out, he said, together. Outside, Chicago slept. But inside this small apartment, something new was being built, something fragile and dangerous and worth protecting, something that felt dangerously like family. Thursday afternoon, Aileen pulled up to Roy's elementary school at exactly 3:15, as he'd done a dozen times over the past month. The Mercedes was conspicuous among the minivans and aging sedans, but Roy always lit up when he saw it, racing toward him with his backpack bouncing. Today was no different. He threw himself into the back seat, breathless with excitement. Tiger Lady, guess what? I got 100 on my spelling test, and Marcus said his big brother does taekwondo and maybe I could come watch sometime and… Seatbelt, Aileen said, checking his mirrors out of habit. Something felt wrong. He couldn't name it yet, just an itch between his shoulder blades, instinct honed by 15 years of staying alive. Oh, right. Roy clicked the belt into place. Can we get hot chocolate before we go home? Maybe. Let me focus on driving. He pulled away from the school, taking the usual route through residential streets quieter than the main roads, less traffic. 3 blocks from the school, he saw them. 3 black SUVs, professional positioning, boxing him in. Fuck, he breathed. That's a bad word. Roy, get down, now, on the floor. Don't look up no matter what you hear. What? Why? Now. The fear in his voice made Roy obey instantly. He curled into the footwell behind Aileen's seat, small and vulnerable. The SUVs closed in. One ahead, one behind, one beside. His Mercedes was trapped. Aileen's hand moved to the gun in his console, always there. Always loaded. Always ready. The passenger window of the SUV beside him lowered. Jin So-yeon smiled at him through the glass, beautiful and deadly, her expression sharp with triumph. Aileen, so lovely to see you. Jin. Aileen's voice was flat, his mind already calculating angles, exits, probability of getting Roy out alive. This is a mistake. Is it? I've been watching you, Tiger. You've gotten soft. Domestic. Jin's eyes flicked to the back seat, where Roy's backpack was visible. The mighty Tiger has a cub now. How sweet. Aileen's blood turned to ice. Whatever issue you have with me, we settle it away from civilians. You know the rules. Rules? Jin laughed. You wrote the rules, then broke them by caring about something. That's weakness, Aileen. And weakness gets exploited. Jin raised her hand. Aileen saw the gun barrels emerging from the SUV windows. 3 vehicles, multiple shooters, professional execution. He had maybe 2 seconds. Roy, stay down, don't move. The world exploded into gunfire. Aileen threw himself sideways, shielding Roy's position with his own body, his gun already in his hand. Glass shattered. Metal shrieked. He returned fire through his window, 2 shots. Center mass. The shooter in the adjacent SUV dropped. Another shooter appeared. He put one between his eyes. Training took over. Muscle memory built on years of violence. He emptied his magazine into the SUV beside him. Driver, passenger, anyone who moved. The vehicle swerved, crashed into a parked car. The SUV behind him rammed forward. His car jolted. Roy screamed. Stay down. He reloaded, always keep spare magazines, always, and twisted to fire through the back window. The driver behind him jerked as Aileen's bullet found him. His vehicle veered, mounted the curb. The SUV ahead tried to reverse. Aileen punched the accelerator, T-boned it at 40 miles per hour. Airbags exploded. His head snapped forward. Pain. Ignore it. Survive first, hurt later. He kicked his door open, rolled out, weapon up. A shooter emerged from the crashed SUV. Aileen dropped him with 2 shots. Chest, head, center mass, then confirm, kill. Another gunman tried to flank him. He pivoted, fired. The man's knee shattered and he went down screaming. Silence crashed over the street like a physical weight. 3 SUVs, disabled, bodies on the pavement. Blood spreading in dark pools. Smoke rising from shattered engines. 90 seconds. That's all it had taken. Aileen stood there, breathing hard, gun still raised, checking for threats. Nothing moved except the dying. His ears rang from gunfire. His hands were steady, they were always steady in combat. Only afterward did he shake. Then he remembered. Roy. He yanked open the back door. Roy was curled in the footwell, exactly where he'd told him to stay, arms wrapped around his head, entire body trembling. Eileen reached for him. Roy flinched. Away from him, like he was the threat. Roy. It's okay. It's over. You're safe. You killed them. His voice was tiny, broken. You killed them all. They were trying to hurt us. There's blood everywhere. There's blood on you. His eyes, those bright, trusting eyes that had seen him as Tiger Lady, as protector, as safe, now looked at him with pure terror. You're a monster. The word hit harder than any bullet. Roy, please. I want my mama. I want my mama right now. He was crying, pressing himself against the far door, as far from Aileen as the car allowed. Aileen wanted to explain. Wanted to make him understand he'd had no choice. That every person he'd killed was trying to kill Roy. But what explanation existed for a 7-year-old who'd just watched him execute 6 people with mechanical precision? Okay, he said quietly, his voice steady despite everything crumbling inside him. I'll take you to your mama. He drove through Chicago streets with a shattered windshield and bullet holes in his doors, following every traffic law perfectly because getting stopped by police right now meant questions he couldn't answer. In the back seat, Roy cried. Quiet, hiccuping sobs that tore pieces from his soul with each sound. He'd protected him, kept him alive, fulfilled his promise, and destroyed his innocence completely. When he pulled up to Terry's building, Roy had his seatbelt off before the car stopped moving. He scrambled out, ran toward the door, never looking back. Aileen sat alone in his ruined Mercedes, hands still steady on the wheel, watching him disappear inside. Blood on his clothes, bodies behind him. The child he'd sworn to protect, looking at him like he was the devil. He'd kept him alive. But he'd lost him anyway. The steering wheel creaked under his grip. He didn't realize he was crying until a tear hit his hand. Outside, the Chicago afternoon continued, oblivious. Inside Aileen's chest, something fundamental shattered. He'd known this would happen eventually. Known his world would poison everything it touched. He just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Aileen sat in his car outside Terry's building for 2 hours, watching the windows, watching shadows move behind curtains. He needed to leave, needed to disappear from their lives before his poison spread further. But his hands wouldn't turn the key, his body refusing the command his mind kept issuing. Finally, as darkness settled over Chicago, he forced himself out of the car and climbed the stairs. Each step felt like walking toward execution. Terry opened the door before Eileen could knock. Her eyes were red, face drawn with worry and rage. Get in here. The apartment felt different now, smaller, suffocating. Roy's door was closed. Eileen could hear muffled crying from inside. Is he? He's terrified. Confused. Asking me why you killed those people. Asking me if you're going to kill us. Terry's voice shook with fury. So you're going to explain to me, right now, what the hell happened? Aileen told her everything. Jin So-yeon's ambush, the gunfight, Roy's eyes when it was over. He left nothing out, stripped himself bare of excuses. They were going to kill him, he finished quietly. Kill both of us. I had no choice. I know that. Terry's voice was hard. I'm not angry about the violence. I'm angry that you're here to say goodbye. Aileen's head snapped up. What? That's why you came, isn't it? To tell me you're leaving. That it's too dangerous. That you're protecting us by disappearing. Terry's laugh was bitter. I can see it on your face, Aileen. You've already decided. Look at your son. The words exploded from Aileen's chest. He's terrified of me. He called me a monster. He's not wrong, Terry. That's what I am. I'm poison. Everything I touch withers or bleeds. I brought my world into his life and it almost killed him. So your solution is to run? My solution is to stop contaminating your lives with my darkness. That's not protection. That's cowardice. Terry stepped closer, fury radiating from her. You think walking away keeps us safe? Jin knows about us now. You think she stops targeting us because you're gone? You think Roy stops having nightmares because you abandoned him? I'm not abandoning. Then what do you call it? Terry's voice cracked. You came into our lives. You made my son love you. You made me. She stopped, swallowing hard. You don't get to run now because things got hard. Things didn't get hard. They got deadly. Roy could have died today. But he didn't. Because you protected him. Because you're the only thing standing between us and people like Jin? I'm the reason Jin targeted you in the first place. Aileen's voice broke. Don't you understand? I'm the danger. I'm what needs to be removed from the equation. No. Terry moved directly in front of him, forcing eye contact. You're not the danger. You're the man who paid for my son's medication, who taught him to stand strong, who made me remember what it feels like to not be alone. Her voice dropped to something raw and honest. You're the man I'm falling in love with. The words hit Aileen like a physical blow. Don't. Don't what? Don't love you? Too late. Terry's eyes blazed. I see you, Aileen. All of you. The violence and the tenderness. The monster and the man who cried watching Roy sleep. I see all of it, and I'm choosing you anyway. You can't. Eileen's voice was barely a whisper now, all his armor cracking. I'll destroy you. I destroy everything I care about. Then let me make that choice. Let me decide what risks I'm willing to take. Terry grabbed Eileen's face, forcing him to look. You don't get to decide you're too broken to be loved. You don't get to decide what I can handle. I've already fallen for you. The confession tore from Eileen's throat like shrapnel. That's why I have to leave. Because I love you both too much to watch my world kill you. Then stay and fight. Terry's voice rang with desperation and determination. Stay and make your world safe for us. You're the tiger, Aileen. You built an empire from nothing. You're telling me you can't protect two people you love? What if I fail? What if next time? What if you succeed? What if you show Roy that monsters can choose to be heroes? What if you show me that love is worth fighting for? Terry's thumbs brushed away tears Aileen didn't realize were falling. You taught Roy that tigers protect what they love. So protect us. Don't run from us. I don't know how to do this. How to be both things what I am, and what you need me to be. Then we figure it out together. Terry's voice softened. Stay. Fight for this. Fight for us. Please. Aileen looked at Roy's closed door, heard his muffled sobs, thought about the terror in his eyes, the way he'd flinched from his touch. Then he looked at Terry, this impossibly strong woman who knew exactly what Aileen was, and chose him anyway. If I stay, Aileen said slowly, everything changes. Jin will come again. Others will follow. It won't stop until I make it stop. Then make it stop. That means war. Real war. Blood and violence and things Roy shouldn't even know exist. He already knows they exist. He saw it today. Terry's voice was steady now. What he needs to see next is you fighting to make sure it never happens again. He needs to see that the tiger protects his family. Family. The word settled into Aileen's chest like coming home. I'll have to be brutal. Ruthless. I'll have to become everything they're afraid of. I know who you are, Aileen. All of who you are. Terry's forehead pressed against his. And I'm asking you to stay anyway. Aileen closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the choice. Leave and they might die. Stay and they might die. But if he stayed, at least he'd be there, fighting, using every ounce of violence he'd cultivated to protect the only people who'd ever made him want to be something more. Okay, he whispered. I'll stay. Promise me. I promise. On my life, on everything I am. I'll stay and I'll fight and I'll burn down anyone who threatens you. Terry kissed him, then fierce and desperate, and full of something that felt dangerously like hope. When they pulled apart, Aileen felt different, committed, terrified, but no longer alone. Now go talk to Roy, Terry said softly. He needs to know you're not going anywhere. Aileen looked at that closed door again, gathering courage. Then he nodded. The tiger had made his choice. Now he had to prove he could be more than the monster Roy had seen. He had to show him he could be his protector too. The war lasted 13 days. Aileen called the meeting at 2 a.m, summoning every lieutenant, every captain, every person who owed him loyalty or feared his wrath. They filled the back room of his flagship restaurant, 30 men and women who'd built his empire with blood and calculation. Jin So-yun targeted a child, he said without preamble. A 7-year-old boy. She crossed a line that doesn't get uncrossed. Ji-woo spoke carefully. Boss, retaliation will mean, not retaliation, annihilation. Eileen's voice was cold, absolute. I want her territory, her people, her money, her connections, everything she's built. I want burning to ash within 2 weeks. No survivors, no mercy. Am I clear? Silence. Then, one by one, they nodded. One more thing, Eileen continued. We're going legitimate. Real legitimate. Not our usual paper-thin legality. I want lawyers, accountants, transition plans. Anything that can't be cleaned gets shut down. We become what we've been pretending to be. Boss, that's billions in revenue. I don't care. Make it happen. The campaign was surgical. Aileen hit Jin's drug distribution first, bribing suppliers, burning warehouses, turning dealers. 3 lieutenants defected overnight, when Aileen offered them twice what Jin paid plus immunity from the coming storm. Jin's money flows dried up within 72 hours. Next came the protection rackets. Aileen visited every business owner Jin extorted, made them a simple offer. Work with me, pay half, stay safe, or stay with Jin and burn when she does. By day 5, Jin's income had dropped 80%. The territorial seizures were bloodier. Jin's enforcers tried to hold ground. Aileen's people were better armed, better trained, and absolutely ruthless. 4 firefights in 6 days. Jin lost 20 people. Aileen lost 2. On day 9, Jin tried to negotiate. Sent an intermediary with white flags and peace offerings. Aileen shot him in the knee and sent him back with a message. You threatened a child. There's no negotiation here. Day 11, Jin's remaining lieutenants abandoned her. Flipped to Eileen's side or fled Chicago entirely, reading the writing on the wall. Day 13, Aileen found Jin in a safe house on the south side, alone except for 2 bodyguards who surrendered the moment they saw who'd come calling. Jin sat at a table, expensive whiskey in hand, looking older than her 40 years. You've won. I get it. So what now? Quick bullet? Torture? Public execution? Aileen sat across from her. Now you leave Chicago. Tonight. You never come back. You never speak my name. Never think about me or mine. That's it? After everything? I could kill you, Aileen said quietly. I want to. But there's a 7-year-old boy who's seen enough death because of me, so you get exile instead. He leaned forward. But if you ever come back, if you ever even dream about touching my family again, I will make you beg for the mercy of a bullet. Understood? Jin nodded slowly. Understood. By dawn, Jin So-yeon was on a plane to Seoul, and Aileen owned Chicago completely. The legitimization process was harder than the war. Lawyers in expensive suits asking uncomfortable questions. Accountants finding creative ways to wash dirty money clean. Offshore accounts becoming domestic investments. Shell corporations transforming into actual businesses. It'll take 18 months, his head lawyer explained. Maybe 2 years. The complexity is, I don't care how long it takes. Make it legal. Make it clean. Make it something I can explain to a child without lying. Simultaneously, he rebuilt his security apparatus. New protocols, new people, layers of protection around Terry and Roy that would make approaching them impossible without Aileen knowing. But the hardest part was Roy. He'd been staying with Terry's sister across town, too traumatized to come home while Aileen waged war. Terry said he barely spoke, just drew pictures of the shooting over and over, working through trauma the only way a 7-year-old knew how. Aileen asked to see him on day 14. Neutral territory, a park where they used to do tiger training, surrounded by normal families doing normal things. Roy sat on a bench, small and quiet, clutching his stuffed tiger. He didn't run when Aileen approached. Didn't smile either. He sat beside him, maintaining careful distance. Hi, Roy. Hi. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. I need to tell you something, Aileen began, and I need you to really hear me. Can you do that? Roy nodded, still not looking at him. I'm not a good person. I've done bad things, hurt people, killed people, things you should never have to know about. His voice stayed steady, honest. What you saw that day, that's who I am. That's the part of me I can't erase. Then why did you come to Christmas? His voice was tiny, broken. Why did you teach me tiger training if you're bad? Because you and your mama reminded me I used to be more than just the bad things. You made me want to try being better. He swallowed hard. I failed you that day. I brought danger into your life. I'm sorry, Roy. I'm so sorry. Mama says you saved me. That those people would have killed us if you weren't there. That's true. But you scared me. Finally, Roy looked at him, his eyes still holding fear but something else too, confusion maybe, or the beginning of understanding. I didn't know you could do that. Be that. I know. And I don't blame you for being scared. I'm scared of that part of me too, sometimes. Roy processed this, his child's mind working through impossible complexity. Mama says you're making things safe now, so it won't happen again. I'm trying. It might take a long time, but I promise I'm trying. More silence. Then, quietly, Will you still teach me tiger training? Aileen's breath caught. You want me to? Mama says tigers protect their families. You protected us. So, he looked at his stuffed tiger, then at Aileen. You're still tiger lady, right? Something cracked open in Aileen's chest, hope, fragile and terrifying. If you want me to be, Roy nodded slowly. Okay, but no more shooting people when I'm there. Deal, I promise. He scooted closer on the bench. Not touching, but closer. Can we get hot chocolate after? Absolutely. It wasn't forgiveness. Not complete. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A crack in the wall. A chance to prove he could be more than the monster Roy had seen. As they walked toward the cafe, Roy slipped his small hand into Eileen's. And Eileen held on like he was the only thing keeping him human. 6 months changed everything. The house in Lincoln Park was beautiful. 3 bedrooms. A real backyard. Security that would make Fort Knox jealous but looked like tasteful landscaping. Roy had picked his room the first day, declaring it perfect for tiger training practice, despite Terry's immediate veto of that idea. No breaking furniture, she'd said firmly. Tiger training stays in the park. Roy had adapted to his new school faster than Aileen expected, making friends with the ease only children possessed. The nightmares came less frequently now, once a week instead of every night. He still slept with the stuffed tiger, but his drawings had shifted from violence to increasingly elaborate scenes of tigers protecting villages. His therapist said it was healthy processing. Aileen just felt grateful every morning. Roy smiled at him without flinching. Terry had enrolled in nursing school that fall, something she'd abandoned years ago, when pregnancy and poverty had made dreams seem impossible. Aileen found her most nights at the kitchen table, textbooks spread around her, determination etched into every line of her face. You don't have to work this hard, Aileen had said once. I need to do this, Terry interrupted gently. For me. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Understand? Aileen understood. He'd spent 15 years building an empire to prove he could survive. Terry needed to prove she could thrive. The transition to legitimate business was 70% complete. His lawyers projected full legality within 8 months. It wouldn't erase his past, but it would build a future where Roy could Google his name without finding blood. Tonight, after dinner, Roy's favorite mac and cheese, made by all 3 of them in their beautiful kitchen, Aileen felt the weight of the small box in his pocket like it was made of lead instead of velvet. Roy was on the couch, working on homework with a focus that made Aileen irrationally proud. Terry was clearing dishes, humming something soft and off-key. Domestic perfection that Aileen had never imagined wanting, let alone having. Roy, can you come here for a minute? Aileen's voice was steadier than he felt. You too, Terry. They gathered in the living room, curiosity and slight concern on their faces. Aileen stood, then after a moment of gathering courage that had nothing to do with physical danger and everything to do with emotional exposure, he knelt. Roy, I need to ask you something important. He straightened, serious in the way he got when he sensed something significant was happening. Okay, for the last 6 months, I've been living here with you and your mama, trying to be part of your life, trying to... He paused, finding words for feelings he'd never learned to express. Trying to be family, and I need to know if that's something you want. For real, permanently. Roy's eyes went wide. You mean like, stay forever? Exactly like that, if you want me to. He looked at his mother, who was watching with glistening eyes, then back at Aileen. Will you keep teaching me tiger training? Every Saturday. And take me to museums and stuff? Whenever you want. And protect Mama and me from bad people? With everything I am. Roy launched himself at him, small arms wrapping around his neck with fierce certainty. Yes, you can be family. For real. Aileen held him, his throat tight with emotions he'd spent years pretending he didn't have. When Roy pulled back, he turned to Terry, who was openly crying now. From his pocket, Aileen pulled the small box, opened it to reveal a simple platinum band with 3 small stones: emerald, sapphire, and diamond. Past, present, and future. Violence, redemption, and hope. Terry Raub, he said, his voice rough with vulnerability. I'm a man with blood on his hands and sins that don't wash clean. I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you or him or this life we're building. But I'm asking anyway, because you taught me that deserving isn't the point. Trying is. Terry's hands covered her mouth, tears streaming freely. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you both? Will you? Yes. Terry dropped to her knees, grabbing Aileen's face. Yes. Yes, you ridiculous man. I told you months ago I chose you. I'm not changing my mind now. Aileen slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Roy cheered like his favorite team had won the championship. And there, in their living room, in their safe house, with their future spread out before them like an unwritten story, they held each other and cried and laughed and felt impossibly, terrifyingly happy. The following Christmas arrived with fresh snow and familiar magic. Their home properly theirs now. Marriage certificate framed in Aileen's office, like a battle medal. Smelled like Korean short ribs and mac and cheese, collard greens and kimchi, cultures blending in ways that shouldn't work but did. Roy was 8 now, taller, confident in ways that made Aileen's chest ache with pride. He set the table carefully, placing his stuffed tiger in the honorary seat beside him. Max needs to eat too, he explained seriously. Max is a stuffed animal, Terry said, but she was smiling. Her nursing school scrubs exchanged for a red dress that made Aileen forget how to speak. Max's family, Roy corrected. Right, Tiger Dad? Tiger Dad. The evolution from Tiger Lady had happened gradually, naturally, until one day, it just was. Aileen had cried the first time Roy had said it, and Roy had patted his hand with the patient wisdom of someone much older. Right, Aileen agreed. Family. They sat down to dinner their second Christmas together, but it felt like they'd been doing this forever. Roy chattered about school, about his friend Marcus and the taekwondo tournament they were planning to enter together. Terry shared stories from her clinical rotations, animated in ways she never used to be. Aileen listened, contributed, laughed at Roy's jokes and held Terry's hand under the table. Outside, snow fell on Chicago, blanketing the city in white. Inside, the house glowed with lights and warmth, and something Aileen had spent 15 years believing he'd never find. Love, family, home. He looked at Roy, absorbed in his story about recess adventures. At Terry, beautiful and strong and choosing him every single day. At the life they'd built from violence and trauma and impossible circumstances. The tiger had finally stopped hunting. He'd found what he was protecting all along. He'd found his way home.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.